Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artist Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the Artists Index in Focus podcast. And we have another wonderful guest. All of our guests are wonderful. We're lucky to live in such a community. And even though as of Monday, May 22nd, which will have already passed by the time you get to listen to this podcast, because we're ahead by probably 6 to 8 weeks now. That'll mark 150 podcasts, which is quite an achievement. And we want to keep on going. And yet, we've only scratched the surface. I don't think anybody knows how many artists are out there. So with that in mind, I'd like to have our guests introduce themselves and spell their names as we do at the top of every podcast. Go ahead, guest.
Hi, my name is Mark Furtado, MarkFurtado, and I'm the owner of The Artisan. So The Artisan is a South Coast, Massachusetts brand. I don't want to put myself in a box and say it's New Bedford, but it's definitely inspired by it since I was born and raised here. We're also known as the Whale Tail brand. I try to give people almost like when you give people directions, give me a landmark. That's what I try to do with people. It's it's the Whale Tail brand. And we've been doing this since 2020. 2020 was more like a test pilot. I remember I was still working from home and I needed all this creative energy out, and eventually I found my way and here I am.
Your brand is attached to what?
It is the meaning behind The Artisan, I came up with this idea of, there was no clothing brands in New Bedford, at least that was New Bedford based. And I shouldn't say that there's no clothing brands. I should say like a brand that is inspired by it, I should say, rather than wholesaling like Nike or Adidas or anything like that. There's no entity, I should say, in New Bedford. So I want to take that and also take its history of whaling and textiles and merge them together. And that's when The Artisan happened, because growing up, obviously in school, we'd go to the whaling museum, we learned about New Bedford's rich history and all that, and how it was based on textiling and whaling and all this stuff. And for some reason during 2020, I had the epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, why isn't this a thing? And luckily, what I do is 10% of each purchase, I actually donate to Save the Oceans, just so I like to say that my clothes make an impact. So it's kind of like our tagline as a brand. And I want to take New Bedford's negative, I shouldn't say negative, more history of whaling and turn that into a positive where it's that was us then, this is us now. And give back a little bit.
No, I totally understand. The whole concept of whaling. A lot of people think, oh, it's romantic. There's boats, there's water, there's whales, and there's an enormous amount of blood and other nastiness. I did a triptych based on chapter 87 of Herman Melville's Moby Dick, and people would say, well, did you have to make it so bloody? I was it was bloody. But that was then. And like you said, this is now. At one time, whaling was one of the largest industries in the country. And it all pretty much worked out of this port. I have heard, however, over the years, people trying to create brands within the South Coast and I don't know if they've ever made it. I know there was one young lady who was doing bathing suits. I haven't heard much from her. There was a couple of young UMass Dartmouth students who were doing something using the quahog as a logo, as a brand. Don't know what happened to them. Then there's the tie manufacturer. I think is it Martha's Vineyard Vines or something.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's out of Martha's Vineyard. So I'm thinking that either some of these brands got snapped up by somebody bigger, or if they did it while they were in college to make a few extra dollars, and they had partners, that the whole thing kind of fell apart as they, went on and became adults.
Right. Like I consider Vineyard Vines like bigger than it is local now, because obviously back in the day, that's how they started. It was basically two brothers who loved going out fishing and going to the vineyard. At least that's when I started the Artisan, I wanted to look into these brands, at least not on the level of corporate, but like on at least in the mid-level area where it's not indie, where it's just where they started, but like they've already established some sort of I guess like rank within the economy. And so when I read into Vineyard Vines, it was great because it's almost like I can sort of relate to them in a sense of like they're in the area and now they're bigger than what they were back then. But I guess what I wanted to do is I want to make space for this thing that I'm doing, because when I started in 2020, I tried to do as much research as I could before I even like dived into what I'm doing. I wanted to see if there was even a brand that like you said, that they started and they eventually like someone took over for them or anything like that. And I didn't really see like a clothing brand for New Bedford, or at least some sort of local entity, I guess I should say. So basically it's 2020 COVID, we're all working from home. I invested into the Cricut machine that crafters use, and it was fun for a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? I want to design my own designs. I appreciate like what I'm doing, but I know I can do more, and I can see the potential that I, at least at that time that I saw I had, and then now it got bigger than what it was.
Yeah.
So I remember I was sitting on my iPad. At least I invested in the iPad. I never had one before. And I was like, let me go on Procreate. Let me look into this program. And I started designing. This is way before the Artisan even established itself. And next thing you know, I just did like a minimalistic like whale tail. And I was like, I like that. So then next thing you know, a couple weeks down, I want to say mid 2020, as if like we're about to transition to work hybrid, because I work for the public schools. So we're about to go back to hybrid, which is like basically we're half in, half out with the kids. And next thing you know, I got the idea of, oh my God, the Artisan. Like I like the idea of having like a mysterious like persona. So like we don't know who the Artisan is, but but it's the whale tail brand. So like it's that kind of.
Okay, I can see where you're going with that. The Artisan is sort of like the spirit of the either the community or the spirit of the community of the spirit of the company itself, or both.
Yes. Yeah. Because usually when I see a clothing brand and I look into their history, it's always like a stereotypical like female, like, oh, like our Riella girl, or for this person is this person and this characteristic. And it's just like, no, like I want to break that wall of like, why does it have to be a person, and why can it be just the energy, or why can it just be like a feeling, rather than why does it have to be a stereotype, I should say, of this is who our market is, this is our demographic. Like I want to, at least when I started this, I wanted to have it open to everyone, whether it's female, male, non-conforming, anything. It's just more of I'm very minimalistic with my clothing a little bit. So like I wanted to create almost an essence of, you can wear this casually, or you can wear this a little bit dressed up with some like nice pair of jeans, or if you want to just lounge around the house. But after I developed all this logos and all these designs for my clothing brand, I want to take it a step further and almost like how I created my values of staying kind of making waves. The idea from that was I wanted to create like a ripple effect, and I wanted I wanted whoever purchases from me to mean something rather than just take their money and not do anything with it and just keep doing what I'm doing. So I met down with my little team that I have, and I was like, I want to do something bigger than this. I want to take it a step further. And that's when I came up with donating some of the proceeds to Save the Oceans. And that's where the clothes make an impact kind of idea came to head. Like it was so weird how timing happened, because it was just like it all fell into place all at the same time, and almost like the puzzle pieces connected. And so we sat down with the team, and next thing you know, we were bouncing ideas off of one another, and we're like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And then that's when 2020 came around, 2021, I should say, came around. And I was like, okay, now we have, when I look at a brand, I look at it as a result rather than what it should look like. So I kept looking at the end goal of saying, I want basically every purchase to mean something. I want clothing that is comfy, that you can wear both at home and on the go, but also on its own, and what you can layer with it. And I want to do like some sort of collections where it could mean other things. Like I did a collection I called the Pet Shop, and I worked with Lighthouse Animal Shelter. So I did like a cute little dog, and I worked with them, and we did a collaboration. And then eventually I want to keep doing more of that rather than just dedicating it to one organization. I eventually want to keep going. Like recently I did an autism awareness whale tail with like little like graphics in it, like a little flight kind, a rainbow, heart, stars, and all that. And it just I called it the Infinite Possibilities collection. So I did that. But eventually, like, that's how I want to keep going. It's like I want to do other things and still have that spirit of the artisan, where we're saving the oceans, but we're doing other things rather than just being niche and being in a box.
Right, social consciousness. Now, let me ask you a couple of questions. Are you presently doing, or has there been thought considering using the artisan as an umbrella or an outlet for other young designers? Because that's one of the biggest problems with designers, fashion designers, is especially when they're starting off, that they're kind of forced to either go work for somebody, and there's an abuse factor there. One of my friends, his wife had a fashion design, went to New York like a lot of them do, and ended up basically pirating jeans. I mean, she would go into a store, buy on an expense account, buy a pair of jeans, bring it back to the shop. They would tear it apart. They would, get cut all the patterns for all the different sizes, and then they stopped knocking off these jeans. And that was her big break, in New York. So, if there are other young people out there who are, or second life people, people who worked, and I've got a story for you on that one, worked for somebody else for a long time and always wanted to do something, and it could range. I mean, look at Bombas with socks. I mean, who would ever thought that you could build a company on socks, So anyway, have you given consideration to saying, okay, look, we've got the brand, so on and so forth. We're looking at your stuff. We like your stuff. Let's sit down, let's talk. And you become almost like an agent, an outlet, where they can say, okay, this is Sally Mae's brought to you by the artisan, something like that.
Of course, like we're still like I said, we started 2020, so we're very in the baby stage of where we are. Like I have a lot more like in my head that I want to do, and that was actually our first. Well, I thought it was our actual first road block of designs. Like as it's almost like the idea of like the world's your oyster. What do you want to do? Like you can go anywhere in any avenue. And technically that's how I started. Like I jumped in, I was like, let me grab some tie-dye, let me grab some of this, and we'll just do our logo first and we'll keep it that way. And then eventually I did like a pumpkin whale tail for like the fall last year. And then eventually I was like, the winter came around and I was like, you know what? Let me be a little bit fun and do a winter collection based on like skiing and all that. Like that was like my inspiration and being at a lodge. So like I turned the brand into like a ski lodge. So like a lot of the shirts for that collection were like the Artisan Ski Lodge, and it was very like mountains, trees, deer. Like it was very that niche, almost like as if you're going to New Hampshire, that kind of thing. And then now for spring, what we're doing is basically I thought of technically I call it the academy in a sense of I wanted to create almost like a university style like clothing where we did like the artisan athletics, we did like a varsity shirt, we also did like an artisan athletic shirt too as well. What else did we do? I started playing with fashion in a sense of like we did crop tops. Like I introduced it last year. I didn't know how well they were gonna do, other than just t-shirts and hoodies and long sleeves. And then we also introduced beanies, and now we're doing regular dad hats. Actually, at least that's what they're calling it now, rather than calling it just a baseball cap. Now it's a dad hat. But that was our roadblock of artwork. Like, how are we going to continuously raise the bar and like introduce new inspirations or new ideas? Like I have my iPad is so filled with like so many ideas, and it's just a matter of them putting into production and into the world. Like I have a couple of Portuguese style whale tails. I have a couple of almost like gradients, like for the summer. Like I have a couple of those. I have some tie-dye within the whale tail. I have what else? Like I just have so many textures and patterns, let's just say that. And that was our roadblock when we first started. It's like, how are we going to like start and more of how are we continuously going to make each year more successful, or at least what can we do to better ourselves, whether it's the product themselves or even just the designs. So what we did is we created like a timeline. So we basically look at the whole year, and I kind of separate them into trimesters in the sense of, okay, this is the first 4 months, the next 4 months, and these are the next 4 months. And for this year, what we did was, so we started as fall as our first, like, I should say first 3 months, then winter, and then spring, then summer, because that's how I at least work in a sense, because I tend to not put myself in the box of like trying to push out designs every week or at least every month, only because I know I'll burn myself out easier than it is planning them as one big collection, I should say. And so now what we do is we meet at least every other month, and we're like, okay, what's our inspiration? What's our not even inspiration, but more like, what do you want to see? Because I have like a little focus group.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what do you want to see? Or at least what products are you looking forward to, or at least want to see that other people aren't doing? And we'll get a list together and we'll meet as one and start doing, okay, let's do this phrase on this item, or like we'll do something other than the whale tail. Like we try to make it ocean themed, so we'll do that, or we'll do a different texture, so like a different version of a tie-dye and colors. And yeah, there's so many factors.
Yeah. I mean, you had mentioned Portuguese before, and then, as you're getting into this section here, I remember one of the banks I used to visit when people actually used to still go into banks, and there was a one of the tellers, a young woman who was of Portuguese heritage, and I got to know her quite well, and I'll never forget it because somebody was talking to her and getting her a little bit riled up. So her Portuguese was, starting to rise to the top, and she said, "Hey, faz you relax." And I thought, what a great bumper sticker or a T-shirt that would be, because people would want to know, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then it is the other thing. When I lived in Portugal, I quickly discovered they have no word for stress. The word for stress is stress. No faz you stress. Don't get stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's novelty. And Jay Peterman, who everybody thinks was just a character on the old Seinfeld series, was an actual cataloger. And the fashion that he had in his catalog was quite distinctive, very, very rare, very, very unique. And he did everything totally the opposite of what he was told not to do. But in the inside cover of every issue of his catalog, he had like a little manifesto, and there was one section that said, "When will American businesses learn that people want things that make their lives the way they wish they were?"
Mm-hmm.
And off the rack is fine, but if you can get something that is unique at off the rack kind of prices or that kind of a vibe, without going into I remember once I was in Houston and I went to the Omni there, and I didn't realize that damn mall was like 4 stories tall. The weird thing is it was almost like marketing demographics, because the bottom level was where the Walmarts were and the dollar stores and such. And then the next level was where the Targets were. And then the next level up was Neiman Marcus and those kinds of things. And then when you went to the very top, the stores were very small. They were boutiques.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't have been more than 1,000, 1,500 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that they had no price tags.
Oh.
And I was on a business trip, so I was going to get my wife something. And I asked the young lady, "How much is this?" And she said, "Oh, honey, if you have to ask, you can't afford it." So I was like, okay, but it makes for a great story,
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm just wondering about all those things, because I just spent a lot of time in marketing. So you're triggering off a lot of marketing things in my head.
I know,
right
like
now.
that's so weird because oh, I forgot to even mention, like, I'm only 20. Well, by the time this episode comes out, I'll be 23. So I
Yep.
technically started this in 2020 when I was 20 years old. That was like the worst subject. So when I went to to high school, and I took business tech as my 4-year shop.
Mhm.
So we touched a little bit of everything, like marketing, insurance,
Mhm.
anything you could think of. And then I went to BCC for office administration. So obviously marketing is a class that you do have to take in order to graduate.
Mhm.
So that was the worst subject. I hated that class so much. But now that I'm in, like, I kind of went the reverse way, where it's like I put myself into this spot where now I have to learn it. It's almost like I turned my negative into, like, I almost turned something into nothing. No, nothing into something, I should say. Sorry. And basically I turned my downfall into like a personal thing, like a personal connection for me, because like, I hated marketing. I had to be honest.
Well, you hated it maybe for a couple of reasons. One was your instructor didn't take the time to find out how you thought, how you operated, how you absorbed knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, maybe, and this is coming from me. I mean, I spent time, I'm the only MFA ever to teach in the College of Business at UMass.
Mm-hmm.
They're teaching straight out of a book, because that's how they learned, was out of a book, and they never spent any time actually doing real marketing. And, I remember when I was living in Portugal, I'd go to the public market and I would see these women, primarily the fishmongers there. these women were incredibly sharp. No, they never took any marketing courses. The lady selling produce, you know, they never took any marketing. It's just common sense. What do people want? They want fresh, they want affordable, and they want service with a smile. And, you know, once you get that initial sale sort of in the bag, then you upsell. Then you say, oh, you know, you just bought some nice kale. How would you like some curly cabbage? Or, you know, how would you like these melons? You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, that becomes a big issue. Two things before I forget. One, I told you about people who worked for other people who always dreamed about doing what they wanted to do. Well, we've got an internationally renowned shoe designer, Chris Donovan. He's on one of our podcasts. And he decided enough's enough. He quit. He was a telephone repairman. He went to Italy. He went to the top fashion shoe design institution in the world there in Italy, and got himself a degree. And he is hitting the runway with, you know, his designs are hitting the runway like you wouldn't believe. And it was a long road, but you got to do what feeds your soul. You know, that's the thing. The other issue is around here, it's something that, from my point of view, the market always seems to ignore. Judy Tenuta, the comedian, I remember hearing her on a radio station. She had come in to do a performance at the Providence Performing Arts Center, and it was on Paul and Alan, WHJY, and they asked her, what's the first thing that she noticed? And, you know, these guys are like, you know, sort of edgy and so on and so forth. I don't even know if they're still in the air. But they said, what's the first thing you notice when you get off the plane? And she said, the women. They're like, oh, okay, you know, we think we got something here. And she's like, no, what are you? They're all spark plugs. She says, I feel like a giant. I'm towering over them, right? So it sort of reinforced the thing is that, okay, you know, based on the ethnic base of the women here, why don't they have sizes that fit these women? I remember at the University of Miami, they had a chain of stores down south. I think they even had one, you know, some up north as well, 579. And then they went 357. And then all of a sudden, poof, I mean, all this, you know, it's the same with shoes and it's the same with clothing. The little pair of black slacks for a woman who wears a 0 on up, not going to get it. Shoes, oh my God. I mean, the smallest now for shoes that I could tell is, because I used to sell for Tom McCann way back when, the smallest, I think in some cases is a 6. They don't even go into 5.5. So there's a corner of the market that no one's really paid attention to, you know? So that's my soapbox thing.
Yeah, I actually had the same conversation with my friend Kayla, I think, who you interviewed recently too.
Oh yeah, Kayla Connor, yeah.
Yes.
The
she's my best friend.
yeah.
And I actually had this conversation because for the summer, which is usually our best season as a business, because a lot of the tourists are coming in from Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and all that. So not to play to my advantage, but kind of do. I want to experiment with swimwear, and so I was doing all this research of swimwear and like all these brands and all that. And I'm like, I messaged Kayla and I was like, why do I feel like that's so disrespectful that a lot of people are only doing small to large as a size? Like, why isn't there an extra small to a 3X? Or why isn't there like why is the bigger like market like so like missed? Because that's where the money is. Like
yeah, they missed the low end and they missed the high end.
Right.
Is pretty much, yeah.
And not everyone fits those sizes. So luckily I pride myself with my business that I offer small to 3X. I'm trying to expand the sizes a little bit more as I get bigger. But usually from my analytics, small to 3X is like the perfect spot. But eventually I want to keep adding more. But no, like I had this conversation with Kayla and I'm like, I feel like that's a little bit disrespectful. And she was like, oh, yeah, I know. And she's like, I had to deal with it every day. And I'm like, and that was my mission too. Like, that's like kind of something I want to prove to myself. Like, if I were to dabble into whether it's that market or even just how I am right now, I do not want to just offer 3 sizes. Like, I want to keep offering more as I can.
Yeah.
And same thing with t-shirts. Like when I first started, I'm like, I wanted like t-shirts that were comfortable, but I don't want to just offer small to extra large. Like I feel like if I'm gonna be, whether it's at the vendor markets around the South Coast area, or if I'm gonna be online where everyone has access to me, whether you're in Hawaii or California, Texas, Florida, and you're buying from my brand, I want them to see that like I offer small to 3X. And it'll just be like a word of mouth thing just on that aspect of like, oh, this brand is from Massachusetts. They're small. They donate to save the oceans. And none of that, it's local rather than buying something from corporate America.
Exactly. Yeah, it does. And again, like Jay Peterman said, people want things that make their lives the way they wish they were. And even if their only wish is to have a little bit of brag factor, where'd you get that? There are people who are always like looking at some, oh, you look so nice. Where'd you get that? Everybody wants to be unique. And then, my generation, I remember when I was at SMU, with the precursor to UMass Dartmouth, there was a May Day concert. And this, we were the generation, we wanted to be unique. We wanted to break the mold. We didn't want the whole concept of like back then, the corporate man, like IBMers, they would look like, if you went to an IBM convention back then, they would look like Men in Black because everybody had a black suit with a black tie, a skinny black, everybody looked the same, right?
Right.
And I remember I had to go to the bathroom, and I came back out and I looked down into the quad where everybody was gathered. It was a sea of blue denim. So much for standing out as individuals.
Oh, yes.
But people have that concept that that's what they want to do, is that they obviously want to stand out. The idea of the giving back, oh my gosh, I haven't taught marketing in so long, and I pretty much like wiped my brain from it. This idea of the social consciousness, staying familiar, cause marketing, that's what it was called. Cause marketing, can really go a lot of different ways. You got a brand that has a whale's tail, and it does harken back to the whaling industry, but another good size industry is whale watching. I live in Fairhaven. I walk by all the whale boats all winter long that they're stored or getting repaired, or getting ready for the next season. And then it's obviously the fishing industry as well. So I'll never forget when my eldest daughter went on a school trip when she was in high school, and she came back and she said, "A lobster is like a big thing in Maine." I said, "Yeah, what would make you say that?" She said, "Oh my God, everywhere you go, it's lobster something. They got keychains, they got bump stickers, and she kept going on and on and on and on. And I said, "Yeah, because lobster is a big business." She said, "But selling lobster keychains?" I said, "Anything, because you leave this area, okay, and they have to have them flown in. So it is a big deal." So go ahead.
Oh, sorry to cut you. Like, luckily, going off of that, I'm very appreciative. Like, for the past year, my brand reached like Hawaii, California, Texas, and all that. And so like a lot of the messages I was getting last year was like, "Oh, I love your brand. It's very nautical. It's perfect for my area." And then there's some people that have ordered from like the Midwest and like, "Oh, we don't have an ocean, but like we're like ocean lovers." And so that was like our niche market, I should say. Like I try not to put myself in a box of where that's our market, that's what it is. I just feel like if I'm going to be out there and have access to everything, I want to be open to everything. Like, I think I've just been ingrained to just keep doing more. Rather than just sticking to one thing.
Well, let me ask you a question. If you look over your sales numbers, are you hitting that 80-20 point yet, where 80% of your sales are from away from here versus from here?
Actually, it's been like a 60-40, like lately.
Okay.
It's been like local and a mix of online.
So local 40, away 60?
Yes.
Yeah, you're notching yourself up, because the more people know about you sometimes. Look, when I was at the University of Miami, on the way to school every morning, I would go by the Parajuncle, the Serpentarium, and Coral Castle. I never once went into 2 years of grad school, went in any one of those places. Okay. However, all of the attractions north of us, like Vizcaya, Hialeah, the racetrack, and all those other attractions, we went there. So we went to the places that were the furthest away from our apartment. It's just like human nature. It's just a weird side of thing, you know? Do you see yourself as a resource for young people who are looking for a place to make their mark in fashion? And do you see, it's a two-part question, do you see yourself sort of creating a cottage industry? And the term cottage industry is, at one time, because my mother was amongst that force of women, in the apparel business. I mean, my madrinha owned a couple of shops. My mother was always the floor lady for her. My mother worked for some of the biggest brands in New York. She was a sample maker, highly regarded one too, by the way. And but now all those places are gone unless they have these little tiny jobbers. So unfortunately, the only way you're going to be able to get your brand, your logo, or your style, your line out there is to get your stuff manufactured in China. And it's not an anti-Asian kind of a thing, but it's more of, we allowed all that to happen. We allowed all of our jobs to go overseas. It's always the bottom line. And people say, "Oh, I'm so afraid we're going to have a war with China." They're not going to go to war with their largest market. I mean, Walmart is probably their largest buyer. So my point being is, do you see opportunities for doing something like that, where you're going to say, okay, don't worry about it. You just concentrate on the branding, and we'll take it from there. Or the designs, I should say.
So for the first part, I mean, yes, like I tried to, my brand is there's so many factors, or I should say like different pathways within it that I didn't see when I first started until like now. So I was like, whether it's young artists, young influencers, or even just like locals that want to just support me within the brand, I welcome it at all costs, because at the end of the day, we build each other up as a community, whether it's an artist, whether it's an influencer, whether it's the designer, or whether it's me, like regardless of the situation, we all build each other up. So I welcome it. I actually, I recently put out an application. Well, I opened up the application to like the local models. So whether you have experience or not, like I do so basically as an owner, I do all the photography for the business. I do all the artwork. I do all the website design. I do all the marketing for it. So I'm basically like the one-man person. But I actually love doing it in a sense of it breaks up. It's almost like you go to a job that's different every day, like as your daily tasks. So it's almost like the same thing here with my business. So like it gets me out of my technical brain into my creative space and back to it brings me back and forth. So like when I do my photo shoots, I give my list of venues. This is the date and times we schedule, we meet, and we just spend like an hour or two just doing photos, whether it's candids, whether it's professional shots, whether it's just product shots. And we just have a blast with it. Like I'm kind of glad that I didn't make this into like a 9-to-5 job, because I think that would just take away the fun out of it. And I know that a lot of business people would say a job isn't supposed to be fun, which is true. I can't discredit that, but luckily I've managed to make it fun with networking with other people, networking for models, networking for artwork, or even just like advice from other business owners. It's like, how do you do this? Or like, I've encountered this situation, how would you handle it? Or what are other ways we can connect and promote both our businesses, but also like how can we make a bigger like splash within the area that we're in, and do things that way. And as for like the second part of the question, I guess right now, if we look at it from a 3 to 5 year goal, I guess right now I want to be more established here locally. At least that's going to be my mission. With doing so, I'm a member of the co-creative, which Dina Hayden manages.
She's a director, yeah.
A director, yes. Me, Kayla, that you interviewed, and our friend Nicole, and now we have another mutual friend who does succulents. We looped her in, and we do this pop-up shop twice a month in downtown. And we came up with the idea because back in November, owning a store was too intimidating for me, like having a brick and mortar, because eventually now everything's online. Everyone just is like, they're just prone to go to online or Amazon or anything like that. And I was just intimidated at the thought of having all this responsibility, being in downtown Bedford, plus having the plate that I have owning the business. And that's when I like almost slapped myself out of it and was like, what are you doing? Like, who cares? Just dive right in. Like, there's like, don't even hold back. That like, if anything, that should be the goal and not the opposite. So Kayla and I and Rachel and Nicole, we were like, okay, let's do a pop-up shop. We didn't know where at first, so then I had the idea. I'm like, why don't we do it at the Co-Creative? It's right off of downtown, right down Union Street. We'll get foot traffic both off season and on season with the tourism. So like, why not? And we met with Dina, and luckily she was very appreciative at the thought, because I guess the Co-Creative, not that it had any foot traffic on its own from like the artists being exhibited for that every month. It kind of opened Dina up to, wow, we can get more locals to look at more local art and have people like see the space, because you usually would go by appointment.
Yeah,
at least
it became almost like a living room for creatives, where there'd be there's poetry slams, there's exhibits, there's talks, there's small musicians doing gigs there. It's a multi-purpose space, and you never know what's going to happen next. So it's kind of what makes it exciting. Yeah, she's really turned that place into a foundation. If anything, I always tell her when I see her, like, I'm just very appreciative to not only be a member there, but also to have the opportunity to like bring other small businesses together. It just for that pop-up shop in downtown, but also be members with other artists or other creatives. Because recently when there was one night where I had to bring in a lot of the stuff the night before for the pop-up shop to set up, and I ended up bumping into like 3 other co-creative members, and we ended up networking, and I'm like, I didn't know you. It's not that I was arrogant with not knowing that they existed. It was just I wasn't exposed. No, that's true. Yeah.
I just wasn't exposed to them, whether it's on social media or through word of mouth. So it was like kind of fun to like showcase not only myself, but like network with other people that way.
Right.
And
you're going to put in the FaceTime.
Right, exactly. And when we do have the shop open on the week on Saturdays, the locals that come in, they're like, oh my God, this place is always closed because you have to come by appointment. And they're like, oh, who did this? Who did that? Is that one for sale? Is that one for sale? Then it not only promotes Dina and whoever the artist is for that month, but also it promotes us too. And we just show like enthusiasm for like the creative environment, because if anything, Kayla and I, although we're creatives in our own industry, I kind of wanted to break that stigma of you just don't have to be a fine artist to be known. Like you can also be the person behind the art, or you can be the person who makes the art, or whether it's like making a logo or doing the product design, or even just being one with a canvas, let's just say. And I kind of want to break that idea of you don't need to be an art, like that stigma of an artist where you just need a canvas and a paintbrush. I kind of want to like bring that up to Dina. It's like, we're creatives too, just not the same way. We're creative in our own space.
People have to realize too that they've got to get over the romantic notions of being an artist or artisan or craftsperson. I mean, and there's these fine lines that separate them. It's all a business. If it's not a business, then it's a hobby. And I think it's gone beyond that. Plus, your generation and the generations that came, between yours and mine, everybody's scrambling. Nothing is a given. Nothing is easy to get accomplished. There's a gig economy. A majority of people are working off of 1099s. I mean, they're not working for anyone. So there's no benefits. There's no Social Security. There's a lot of those things that aren't happening. And, they used to call it paying your dues. But back then it was, you had all these fingers, but they weren't connected to any hands. And now, and I've seen the evolution of all of this, now you've got fingers on hands, meaning people can help each other out. We've got institutions here that we've never had before, co-creative, in a bunch of other places, they just didn't exist. And I remember the first time I had heard about it, coming up in a very negative minded way. Oh, that'll never work here. People would go away and they'd come back saying, oh, you should see what we saw at Disney World, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and we went to International Drive. And, let's wouldn't it be great if we had something like that here? Oh, it'd never work. It's like, wait a minute, it works over there, it doesn't work over here.
Right. And that's what
everybody leaves here to go there.
Right. And that's what we told Dina too. Like, we didn't think places like that existed, obviously, when we grew up, because we're like, artists, a co-creative hub, like, who wants to do that? Or at least who wants to kick that off?
Yeah, artists don't get along with each other. We like to be individuals. Yeah, right. And that's all totally been broken. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's like, we like sometimes we give each other ideas or inspirations, or give us things that we didn't think about initially. It's like, oh, why don't you do it this way rather than that way, and then do it. It's so amazing. And then I'm just very grateful to be a part of not only that space, but also have the opportunity to showcase my business along with my other friends' business and bring each other up, as well as bringing locals to Dina's hub and showcase other artists there too. And then just like growing up personally, it's not that I wasn't an artistic kid. It was more of, I was very inspired by music and I was more audio, I should say, than it was visual. Now, I think now that I'm like 23 when this episode comes out, but now that I'm 23, I can see myself as like equally spread out with audio, visual, and literature, like literary, inspirations. So when I meet with my little team, I'll almost look at like both. I started doing a vision board recently. I didn't do this initially when I first started because I would just write ideas down and then I would throw them away. Well, not throw them away. I'd put them to life and then throw them away. But I guess recently when I spoke to someone, they were like, "Oh, you should really get a vision board. Like, how do you want the photos to look? What's your inspiration for the photos? Or like, what kickstarts this inspiration of a collection or anything like that?" And so I started doing it, and it's honestly the best thing I think I've ever done, in a sense of because at least all of them are saved online, but also it gives you a sense of like who the photographer was or what the aesthetic is, I should say, or even what do I want to, how do I want the photos or the designs to interpret from a customer's perspective, rather than just making it more niche, I should say. And so when I started this vision, so I started the vision board. It's been the best thing ever. And now when we do set up at the Co-Creative every twice a month, but now in the summer we're gonna do every Saturday because it's summertime. We want to be out and be one with the people. And now, at least this is just my what I've seen from locals to my brand is there. I always hear that like it's either cute, unique, or it's never been done before, which is some of the key words I started when I first started this brand. Is like, I want to be unique, I want to be different, and I want to open up a space that hasn't been touched before, or at least to my knowledge. Like you said, there were some other brands that came up before me and just never worked out, or at least or like fizzled out. Like, that's my mission, is to not fizzle out and just keep going with it and keep pushing myself.
That's a good at a good point to end, because unfortunately the time is really like blown right by. And I want to thank you for coming by and talking to us. And we want to hear back from you, and hopefully the podcast will help attract other people, because the concept of it takes a village that's one concept. Another old-fashioned concept is stone soup. And a lot of people think, okay, well, this is Mark's brand. Well, yeah, it's Mark's brand, but if you look behind the label, there's a whole bunch of people that make this happen. It just doesn't all come from one individual. So that's what makes the difference. Well, I really want to thank you so much for reaching out, contacting us, and we got you down now. So you've been bookmarked, and you've bookmarked your place in history, as we like to say. So you got more to go. Well, thank you so much. And hold on, folks. We've been speaking with Mark Furtado, the Artisan New Bedford, who is a design brand. And if you joined us late, well, just start all over again and listen to it, okay? And also visit the accompanying blog page that goes with each and every one of our podcasts. Thanks so much. See you later. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.